2 members. Some of you would have said, after all, it's shares. Number 1, choice of business organization. I'll say it again. Number 1, choice of business organization. I'll say it again, class. Number 1 is called what? Now, if you look at the law school or the Council of Legal Education lesson outcome, you observe that week 3 of corporate law was choice of business organization. At this stage, the company is not yet incorporated. Once they make their choice, the next is promotion activity. Number 3, pre-incorporation contracts. Number 3 we have is the pre-incorporation contract. Number 3 is the pre-incorporation contract. I'll say it again. Number 3 is the pre-incorporation what? Contract. Now listen. When you hear the word pre-incorporation, at this stage you have something like this: joint venture agreement, memorandum of understanding, director service contract, shareholders agreement, and so on and so forth. You have several agreements that is made between the company and the promoters, because we are still in the pre-incorporation stage. Number 4, formation of companies. Number 4, formation of companies. Take note. Number 4 we have is the formation of what? Company. Where the solicitor take up the respective corporate forms, fill them, and send to CAC before the company is incorporated. We have formation, and lastly, foreign participation in Nigeria. And lastly, foreign participation. Your lesson outcome, you will see that this topic formed week 3 to week 8 of corporate law. Now, what they were trying to tell you without you knowing is that when this topic is taught, the company is yet to be incorporated. The day you are teaching you choice of business organization, the company is not yet formed. It's better to call them subscribers. The day they were teaching you pre-incorporation contract and promotion activity, the company was not yet also formed. Even the day they were taught formation of companies, it was just the procedure by which the company will be formed. But the company was not yet also formed. And when you were taught foreign participation, particularly, so please, when you see the pre-incorporation stage, it means the stage by which the company is not yet incorporated. Members are not called members. What do we call them, class? What do we call them at the stage companies are not yet formed? Company is not yet incorporated. So you see, when you read corporate law, whether your textbook or an exams, your first task is to ask yourself, what is the stage of incorporation? Have the company been incorporated, or have the company not yet been incorporated? That brings us to the second stage, the post-incorporation stage. The next stage we have is called the post-incorporation stage. Now listen attentively. We have the post-incorporation what? Stage. Now listen, from the word post and the word incorporation, you observe that the word post signify after. Signify the word what, class? That is, at this point, the company is already incorporated. So let's write. At this point, the company or organization are already incorporated. At this point, the company and other organization are already incorporated. I'll say it again. At this point, the company and other organization are already incorporated. So when you see a scenario that says the company is already incorporated, you are no longer in pre-incorporation. What stage are you now? Now let's write. Subscribers, but are referred to as members. At this stage, subscribers are referred to as what? Members. I hope you now know when to call them members now, class. At what point do we call them members? Once the company has been incorporated. We no longer call them subscribers. We refer to them as what? Now let's write. Simply because their names should be transferred. Simply because their names should be transferred into the register of members. Simply because their names is to be transferred into the register of members within 28 days of incorporation. Simply because their names are to be transferred into the register of members within 28 days of incorporation. Now listen to the technique now. As at the time the company was not yet formed, they were referred to as subscribers. And their names were rather entered into the memorandum of association. Now once the company is already formed, what takes place is that the company is mandated to transfer their names from the memorandum of what? Association into what book? Within how many days? Within 28 days of incorporation. Please, not just 28 days. Please be mindful of the date. I did not just say 28 days. I said 28 days after incorporation. Now let's write. The proof of incorporation. How do you know that a company has been fully incorporated? The proof of incorporation is a document by Corporate Affairs Commission. The proof of incorporation is a certificate of what? Incorporation. I'll say it again. The proof by Corporate Affairs Commission, known as Certificate of what? Incorporation. I'll say it again. The proof of incorporation is a document issued by Corporate Affairs Commission, known as Certificate of what? Incorporation. So please, if you're asking the bar exam, how do you prove that a company has been incorporated? How do you prove that? What document shows that a company has been incorporated? Now, this certificate of incorporation is issued by what organization or agency? By Corporate Affairs what? Now listen, having discussed the post-incorporation stage, want to find out what are the matters, just like we have seen in pre-incorporation stage, what are the matters a company must do upon incorporation? Now let's write. Number one, publication of names. Number one is what, class? Number one is publication of names. I'll say it again. Number one is publication of what? So once a company is incorporated, the first activity the company must engage in is publication of what? So you see, you can't be doing publication of name during pre-incorporation. Publication of name is done at post-incorporation. I'll give an example. The life of a company is the life of every human seated down here. And what do I mean by that? Once a child is born, the first activity they do after 7 days is naming ceremony. Is naming what? Same with company. The moment a company is incorporated, the first activity they do is also naming ceremony. But their own naming ceremony is called publication of what? Names. So companies, just like humans, but they are artificial persons. They engage in naming ceremony, but in their own case, their naming ceremony is publication of what? Names. Now, number two, after they have done the publication of names, number two is keeping of statutory books. Once a company has been formed, the next activity they should do is to keep what books? Statutory books. Now let me beg you please. Under the old CAMA, we had 9 statutory books. Under the new CAMA, we have 11 statutory books. Out of the 9 or 11 that we now have now, public companies can keep all books, but private companies cannot keep 2 statutory books. So I want to find out, what are those 2 books that private company will not keep? So let's write. Private company will not keep the following books. Private companies will not keep the following books. I'll say it again. Private companies will not keep the following what? Books. Number 1, index of members. One of the books that private company will not keep, class, number 1, is the index of what? Members. Now listen, don't write, just pay attention. Now the reason why private company cannot keep index of members is simply because the book called index of members can only be kept if your membership have exceeded 50 members. Have exceeded what? 50 members. And one of the features or nature of private company is that their numbers of members cannot exceed 50. Cannot exceed how many, class? And since they cannot exceed 50, they will not keep index of what? Members. So please take note. One of the statutory books a private company will not keep is called the index of what? Members. Number 2, the register of substantial interest in shares. The next book they will not keep is called the register of substantial interest in shares. I'll say it again. Another book a private company will not keep is the register of what? Substantial interest in what? Shares. For the last time. Another book that private company will not keep is the Register of Substantial Interest in what? Now let's just write what this book is. Now let's write. Those whose name are on this register, those whose name are on this register must possess at least 5% of the company share capital. I'm going to make a remark very soon. Those whose name are kept in this book must have at least 5% of the company share what? Capital. They should have how many percent, class? 5% of the company share what? Capital. For the last time, those whose name are in the Register of Substantial Interest in Shares, what is the number of shares they must possess at least? Now let me beg you why I keep shouting that please, there are two reasons that make students do not pass the bar exam. One is under information. That is, you don't have sufficient information. And two, having enough of wrong information other than your self-doubt and your self-unbelief. When you have these two, there's a problem. If you look at some previous textbooks on corporate law, the percentage under CAMA 1990 was 10%. Was how many percent? But the new CAMA reduced it from 10% to 5%. So if you are still reading maths, making reference to 10%, just know you are sitting on a time bomb. There are so many changes that have been made, and I've been starting from yesterday, that law is dynamic. It is subject to what? Change. But some of you just have this belief that no, it must still be the same. No. Law changes from time to time. And those of you that were here yesterday, I made it very clear that my prayer for every one of you here is for us to get called to the bar this year. Because next year will not be smiling at anybody. The entire curriculum will be overhauled. I told you yesterday. There are new laws. See, as Oga came into office, he assigned close to 20 laws already. Before next year now, all the laws affecting property, civil, criminal, ethics, and corporate will all change. So you are coming to see something that is very new. So get it done now, so that we don't have any issue whatsoever. Please. Now listen carefully. I said formerly it was 10%. But how many percent is it now? Now why am I warning you? Many of you that are king of past questions, you already cram all the answers at the back. You will still be seeing 10% when they ask, what is the minimum amount of shares you must possess? You will see A, 15%, B, 10%, C, 5%, and D, 25%. Now, if you choose 5% and you check the back will still be telling you 10%. Now, the reason is this. It is not wrong, but it was answered based on the old provision of the law. And that law has now been repealed. Past questions are not bad, but the problem is this. By the time the law changes, the past question will not change. Hope you know. The answer will still be the previous answer. And that's why students do not get it right. Please be careful of past questions. I don't know how we can say it 1,000 times. Many of the answers they provide, even you yourself, some of them are outdated and some of them are completely wrong. But how do you vet your answer? You don't know who to call. All you do is to cram the answer at the back and you go to the hall, you say you have finished work, but that's not true. Please, for the last time, it is no longer 10%. How many percent is it now? Now listen carefully. So these are the two books that private company will not keep. One, index of what? And two, register of substantial interest in what? Now the third agenda they will do after keeping statutory books is holding of general meetings. Number 3, holding. I am still in post-incorporation stage and we are looking at the matters in each stage. Number 3, holding of general meeting. I'll say it again. Number 3, holding of general meetings. Number 3 again, holding of what meetings? Now listen, there are 4 general meetings. Don't write, just listen, because this is not time to, when I want you to write, I'll tell you to write, because I don't really have time. There are 4 general meetings a company can hold. One of them is statutory meeting. One of them is called what? Now, but the good thing is this. Statutory meeting can only be held by public companies. Can only be held by what companies? Only public companies can hold statutory what? Meeting. But let me now say this. Nobody will ask you in the exam, what can public company do? And this is where I encourage every one of you to pay closer attention. Nobody will say whether this company is public or this company is private. The best way to know whether a company is public or private is by identifying the last initial or identity of the company. For example, if a company ends with the word LTD, with the word what? Without them telling you, please always take note that that is a private company. Is what company, class? So when you see the word LTD, it connotes private what? Company. Now listen, if they don't want to use LTD, they will use limited. L-I-M-I-T-E-D. So either you see LTD or you see what? Limited. When you see either of these two, it deduces that the company is a private company. But how do you know that the company is public? You will see the word PLC. You see the word, what word will you see? But you know the sad thing, many of you, while reading corporate law question in exam or scenario, you care less of whether it's LTD or PLC. You just start reading, as if it's a story you're enjoying. But one of the things you don't know, the moment you miss out on the nature of the company, you will give law school a wrong answer. I'll give you an example. In one certain bar exam, a compulsory question for that matter. The question in scenario was, let's say, ABC Limited wanted to engage in takeover bid of another EBC Limited. Now, from the word limited, you would have deduced that both companies are private what? Now, the first question was, comment on the takeover bid made by ABC Limited. Now, if you are not careful, this is what you have written. Generally, takeover is an act in corporate restructuring where the company being taken over become a subsidiary. You are just talking. So you now be very happy with yourself. Man, I know Buko. Now, what you have just written is not the answer. Now, if I tell you the answer, you'll be actually very shocked that all you needed to write was not explaining takeover, but just the answer. And the answer is one line. A private company cannot engage in takeover bid. Full stop. That's the answer. How do you know that that's the answer? It's by identifying the nature of the company. But watch the next question. Assuming it was ABC PLC. Assuming it was what? ABC what? Would your position still be what? The same. Now all they have just done is to change private to without saying public and private. So the worst mistake you make in corporate law is to read corporate law question without identifying the initial, whether it is limited or PLC. And if you don't do that, you'll be responsible for having misfiring exams. Your answer, you say you have misfired. So please, do not answer any question in corporate law without first identifying the nature of the company, whether they are private or public. Like I just said, statutory meeting can only be held by what company, class? Now watch this question. The company is named Xenox Ltd. His name what? Xenox Ltd. The secretary approached you that he's afraid that the company has not yet held the statutory meeting. And by so doing, somebody may bring an application for compulsory winding. Advise the secretary. Let me tell you the truth. If you don't know the nature of the company, you have no advice to give. Some of you would have advised, generally, statutory meeting must be held by public. You'll be thinking that's the answer. And failure to do so will amount to compulsory what? Therefore, I will advise them to hold the statutory what? All you have just said is not an advice. You have caused confusion. The advice is by looking at the nature of the, and say the company is LTD. This is your answer. A private company cannot hold statutory. Therefore, my advice is the secretary should not panic. Whether you can't hold such what? Meeting. That's it. That fan is making noise there, please. Now listen. You should bend your head though. Now, listen carefully, class. You see, your advice is not based on what you know in corporate law. It's by having what you know in corporate law and attach it to the company, whether I fit it. And when it does not fit the company, that's where the problem is. So please, I'm begging you, when you want to answer a question on corporate law, find out, is it private or public company? So like I said, you must hold statutory what? Meeting. Let's go to the fourth agenda. Number 4, returns to CAC. The next thing you do at the post-incorporation stage is returns to what? CAC. Now listen carefully. I'm going to do a bit of returns now to make it easier. I'm going to make it very short. Now let's write briefly. Notice to CAC. Let's write. I want to give you a time frame and the notice. Notice to what? CAC. Involving human agents. Write it down. I will explain to you so you don't forget. Notice to CAC. Involving what agent? Must be sent within 14 days. Notice to CAC. Involving human agents. Must be sent to CAC within how many days? Now let me tell you what I mean by human agents. Human agents are those offices that human occupy, such as director, secretary, auditors. When you see a question in the bar exam, within what time will you send notice to remove director? 14. Within what time will you send notice to remove secretary? 14. Within what time will you send notice to remove auditor? 14. Because all these offices are occupied by you. Any office occupied by humans, and you are sending notice to CAC, they must be sent within 14 days. But you'll be cramming. 14 days. Calm down. Be smart for once. You don't need to cram all these things. They know they have a yardstick to remember. Now let's continue. Number 2. Notice of artificial agents. The next heading. Notice of what agent this time? Anything artificial means something that does not have human agents. Artificial. Notice of artificial agents are sent to CAC within 15 days. Notice of artificial agents are sent to CAC within how many days? Let me give an example. Is change of name a human being? What is change of name? ATI. Is change of register address a human being? Is increase in share capital a human being? Anytime you are sending to CAC notice that does not involve human agents, that is increase in share capital, change of register address, anything they do that does not involve human, you send to CAC within 15 days. So when you say an MCQ, and they say, wait, what time will you send notice to change of director? Director na human being now. 14. Within what time will you send to CAC notice of increase in share? Increase in share capital, not be human. How many days? 15. The notice is between 14 and 15. But 14 was for human agent and 15 was for non-human agents. Now let's continue, please. So listen. So when you are sending notice to Corporate Affairs Commission, please just find out. If it is human agent, 14 days. If it is non-human agent, 15 days. Is that point very clear, class? Is that point very clear, class? So my question now, listen. Notice of return of allotment. Notice of return of allotment. How many days? Why? Notice of change of auditor. How many days? Why? And that was it. That was it. Okay. Now let's continue, please. So listen carefully. We make returns to corporate affairs what? Commission. Let's go to the next thing. Still on the agenda. We're not done yet, please. Don't worry. The next thing, number 5, we have is Code of Corporate Governance. Number 5. Still on matters you do at post-incorporation stage. Code of Corporate what? Governance. Now don't worry. I'm just listing out the matters you do at post-incorporation stage. Number 1 is publication of what? Names. Let me remind you so you know what we are doing. Number 2 is keeping of statutory what? Number 3 is holding of meetings. Number 4 is returns to corporate affairs. Number 5 is Code of Corporate Governance. Now don't write, just listen, please, listen. When we say Code of Corporate Governance, there are 4 topics or 5 topics under it. It is where you have the following topics. You can write if you want to write. Directors and secretary. Directors and secretary are under the Code of Corporate Governance. We have majority rule and minority protection. They are under the Code of Corporate Governance. We have financial statement, auditors and audit committee. They are under the Code of Corporate Governance. And we have the OECD best practice. All these are the topics under Code of Corporate Governance. Now, after Code of Corporate Governance, the next agenda we have is accompanying securities. We are still in corporate law post-incorporation stage. Number 6 is accompanying what? Securities. I'll say it again. Number 6 is accompanying what? Securities. For the last time. Number 6 is accompanying what? Securities. Now listen, under company securities, you see something like this. Shares, debenture, collective investment what? Scheme and bond. I'll say it again. Shares, debenture, collective investment scheme and what? Bond. Now these are what you have under company securities. Now after company securities, we have corporate restructuring. We have corporate what? Now listen carefully. We have corporate what? Now listen. We have company security, and the next thing we have is corporate what? Restructuring. Now let me say this. Now if there is one topic students find difficult, is the topic corporate what? Restructuring. Now just permit me. In the next 5 minutes or 6 minutes, I will explain the topic corporate restructuring. But please, I want you to pay close attention. I'm going to be giving out keywords to identify them. Now listen, let me just remind you. Corporate restructuring is those topic, you see topic like this, arrangement and compromise, merger, takeover. Hope you know what I'm trying to talk about now. Now listen, you can write if you want to write. There are 2 reasons why companies engage in restructuring options. You can write if you want to write, please, class. There are 2 reasons. It's not about corporate restructuring as a topic. Please learn now. There are 2 reasons companies engage in corporate restructuring. Just 2 reasons. There are 2 reasons a company engage in corporate what? Restructuring. Number 1, a state of financial difficulties. The first reason why companies engage in corporate restructuring option is a state of financial what? Difficulty. Whenever a company is facing financial difficulty, the company will want to engage in corporate what? Restructuring. Now listen, not just company, we humans do the same thing. Now there was a period in the life of every Nigeria when Naira was very scarce. Do you remember that period? When we could not access Naira. Even those that don't have money were happy that period because all of us were not equal. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So before, if you were eating 3 times a day, when you have financial difficulty, can you still eat 3 times a day? What will you do? You will restructure yourself, Abi, and sometimes you might be eating once in a. That's what companies do too. Whenever company faces financial difficulty, they consider corporate restructuring. That's what they do. But one of the reasons why they are going through restructuring is because they are in a state of financial defeat. Now the second reason, number 2, a state of moribund. Number 2, a state of what? Moribund. I'm going to spell it. M-O-R-I-B-U-N-D. M-O-R-I-B-U-N-D. A state of what? Now listen. You see, one of the problems we have is this, because teachers are no longer dictating for students to write, we no longer know how to spell again. Yes. So if I ask you the last time you dictated and write note, it's SS3. In university, they dictate again. They just give you material to read. And that has killed our spelling culture. Nigerians can't spell again. I said moribund. If I walk around now, some of you would have written, you would have bound me in your mori. And that's the truth. Now listen, it's not about spelling alone. What is the meaning of moribund? Now let me tell you one thing about law. In law, you are always open to learning new terms and new meanings. And that's the truth. Now when we say a company is a state of moribund, what you hear some people say in class, and if I say it now you will laugh, economic comatose. Have you heard of that word before? Okay, good. Now you are hearing, but you don't care to ask the meaning. When they say moribund or economic comatose, it means the company is still in existence, but can no longer do business. A company in what? Existence, that can no longer do what? Now let me tell you where the word came from, comatose. It's just like human. A human in coma, is he still alive? No, he's alive now. A human being in coma, is he still alive? But can he do business? Can he feed? That's exactly what happened. Comatose for company is like a human in a state of what? Coma, but cannot do anything. My question to you now, the person in coma, is he having financial problem? If he doesn't come out of coma, will you force him to come out of coma? And that's what happens when you misunderstand corporate restructuring. If you give a company in coma the things that are meant for company in financial defeat. Now let me give an example. Somebody is in financial difficulty and somebody is in coma. Which of them need money? Now listen again. Somebody is in coma, financial difficulty and in coma. Which of them need money? Which of them need treatment? Listen. Which of them need money? Which of them needs treatment? Now this is what happened to most of you. You give treatment to somebody in financial difficulty. And you give money to those in. And that's why students misunderstand corporate restructuring. You have to give money to those in financial what? And give treatment to those in. And that's what I'm exposed to you. What are the treatments for those in coma? And what are the finances for those in financial? Now let's look at the next heading. Options available under financial difficulty. It will make more sense now. Options available to companies in financial what? Difficulties. Number 1, arrangement and compromise. Number 1, arrangement and what? Now listen carefully, class. Arrangement and compromise. If you give it to somebody in coma, the person will die. You do arrangement and compromise with a company in financial what? Yes, you do that to them. Because the reason why they are arranging is for them to compro. Yes. So please, if you see a question and the company is in a state of comatose or the company in the state of mori, please do not recommend arrangement and what you recommend for arrangement and compromise are company in financial what? So number one, financial aid to those in financial difficulty is arrangement and what? Number two, reduction in share capital. Number two, reduction in share what? Capital. If a person is in financial difficulty and he spends lavishly, you will tell him, please reduce your what? Spending habits. Are you getting it? But if you don't understand the state of the person, you'll be recommending things the person should not do. It's just like you telling the person in financial difficulty to sell all he has and dash the money out. Is it not death sentence you have sentenced the person to now already? So what you tell him, please reduce your share what? Number three, management buyout. We are giving options to companies that are in financial difficulties. Number three is what, class? A company in financial difficulty, you recommend management what? Number four, merger. A company in financial difficulty, you will tell the person to what? Merge. Now what we call merger in corporate law as the company, marriage for humans. So when human gets married, it's the same as company doing what? Merger. That's what it means. So marriage, and if you doubt me, some people marry out of financial difficulties. Go and find out. A woman who wants to sustain her family will marry a rich. That's merger. Company does the same thing. Wait, I noticed that it's the men that are clapping, the women are not clapping. What happened now? Okay. Now listen. It's the same thing. So when you say you are finding the topic difficult, it's because you are not internalizing it. A company that is in financial difficulty sees merger or marriage as an escape route. So when Diamond Bank had financial difficulty, they merged with Access. That's what they did. It was a marriage. Because they were in financial what? Difficulties. Now the next one is takeover. If they are not doing merger, what are they doing? Now, but the good thing is this. Takeover now is now covered under two statutes. It's covered under Investment and Securities Act, ISA. But under ISA, it is called takeover bid. It's called takeover what? Now, the second statute that covers for takeover is the Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA. In CAMA, we call it takeover offer. We call it takeover what? They are not the same thing. No, watch my statement. Under ISA, it is called takeover bid. Under CAMA, it is called takeover offer. I'll say it again. Under ISA, what do we call it, class? Under ISA, what do we call it? Under CAMA, what do we call it? Now let me say this in one word. Now listen. The takeover bid under ISA can only be done by public companies. Can only be done by what companies? Now to be prescribed, I mean public quoted companies. But I will tell you what quoted is in the long run. I'll say it again. Takeover bid under ISA can only be engaged by public quoted companies. I'll tell you what the word quoted is. Just stay tuned. I will explain to you. Under ISA, takeover bid, it is only done by what company, class? Public quoted what? Under CAMA, takeover offer, it is done by all companies. CAMA takeover offer is done by what? All companies. So one of the difference between ISA and CAMA is this. Under ISA takeover, only public quoted company can participate. Under CAMA takeover offer, not bid. Bid is used by ISA. CAMA use takeover offer. Under takeover offer, what is used? All companies can engage in takeover offer under CAMA. Is that point very clear, class? So we have takeover bid and we have takeover offer. As little as the word bid and offer, students don't take notes. So when you say a question that says take over with the word bid, it means according to ISA. If you say a question that says take over offer, it means Companies and Allied Matters Acts. There's a thin line between the both of them. But you know, students are guilty of hasty generalization. When you just see takeover, it's takeover now. No. There's a takeover bid and there's a takeover offer. Takeover bid is regulated by the Investment and Securities Act. And the only company that can engage in such is a public quoted. After takeover, we have acquisition. After takeover, we have what? Acquisition. Number one, read what you have written. What are the options or corporate restructuring options available to company in financial difficulty? Number one. Number two. Number three. Number four. Number five. Number six. So these are the options available to company that are in financial difficulty. The next option. Options available to company in a state of moribund, economic comatose. Options available to companies in a state of what? Moribund. I'll say it again, class. Options available to companies in a state of what? Moribund. I hope you know what moribund is. The company is still in existence but cannot do business. I'll give you an example, but don't worry. Now let's look at the options available to a company in a state of what? Moribund. Number one, arrangement on sale. Number one, arrangement on sale. Whenever a company is in a state of moribund, you can arrange to what? Sell. Whenever a company is not doing business, one of the things they do is to engage in arrangement on. Number two, purchase and assumption. If they don't do arrangement on sale because they are in a state of moribund, another option is to do purchase and what? Assumption. Purchase and what? And lastly, number three, cherry picking. And number three is cherry picking. CHERRY PICKING. Cherry picking. Cherry, now the fruits. When it falls down, you pick them. Cherry picking. CHERRY, then picking. Cherry picking. Cherry picking. Now listen. What are the options available to a company in a state of moribund? Number one. Number two. Number three. Now let's pause. Now listen to what you don't really understand in the exam. So let me make it clearer now. Now listen. Savannah Bank PLC, let me tell you to your notice, did not wind up. Savannah Bank did not wind up. Savannah Bank PLC is in a state of moribund. They seized their license from them, and as a bank without what? License cannot operate as commercial. And because they cannot operate as commercial bank, they are still in existence, but they can no longer do business. Now, Savannah Bank is a perfect state of a company in moribund. Our refinery are also in a state of what? Moribund. They did not wind up, but they can no longer do. So when you call top lawyers who understand corporate law to engage in discussion, they say, our refineries are in a state of what? Now to revive them, you can't do merger. Can you marry somebody in coma? Can you marry somebody in coma? So when you suggest merger in that state, you don't know corporate law. Whenever a company is in a state of moribund, you can advise them to go for arrangement on purchase and what? Or cherry. And that was what all the big men were doing with our refinery. They came and suggest that let them do cherry picking. Let them pick the areas of the refinery they will want to work with. But when the government was becoming slow, Dangote decided to build his own refinery. They all had Dangote, Otedola, them, they planned. to go to all the refinery they were putting on purchase and assumption, or cherry picking, or arrangement on sale. When you see a company in moribund, the company is still in existence, but can no longer do. Now look at this question now. A company is in a state of moribund. Is a state of what? All are the option to be used in that circumstances. What's the option? A, merger. A is what? B, takeover. B is what? C, purchase and assumption. And D, all of the above. Can you use all of the above? What do we use in this option for a company in a state of moribund? Purchase and what? And that is the understanding of it. Corporate restructuring has to do with the state of the company. You must find out if the company is in financial difficulty or in a state of moribund. Now listen, Diamond Bank was not in a state of moribund. They were still in existence, but they were facing financial defeat. So it would be wrong to meet the director of Diamond Bank and say, I advise that you engage in purchase and assumption. What they would rather do in a state of financial difficulty, merger, takeover, arrangement, and compro, just to mention a few. Because that is the option available to company in a state of financial what? And that is what I mean. When somebody is in financial difficulty, give him money. If somebody is in a state of coma, give him treats. But before, some of you don't know the difference between the both of them. You just pick anyone you see. But before you answer any question on corporate restructuring, find out their states. Are they in a state of financial what? Or are they in a state of economic comatose, which is a state of moribund? So moribund state is any state where the company is still in existence, but can no longer engage in any form of business. That's what we'll call it. I hope you have learned something today. Now let's proceed. Now, I haven't talked about corporate restructuring. The last agenda at the post-incorporation stage is corporate litigation. The last agenda is corporate what? Litigation. Now, not to so many of you, you don't even know that there's what we call corporate litigation. In short, it should have been a cost on its own, but thank God they did not make it a cost on its own. We would have had criminal litigation, civil litigation, corporate law practice, corporate litigation. You say, yes, there is corporate litigation under corporate law practice. Now, I'll tell you what it talks about. Corporate litigation talks about the courts that have jurisdiction in corporate matters. The court that has what? In corporate what? So I want to find out, what are the courts? I'll just list them. What are the courts that have corporate jurisdiction? Number one, state high courts. Number one court that has corporate practice is state what? Now, if you have written state high court, put beside it and write all commercial disputes. What state high court entertain is commercial what? Disputes. I'll say it again. The state high courts, the jurisdiction they have under corporate litigation is commercial disputes. Is what dispute, class? Number two court, federal high courts. Another court that have jurisdiction in corporate law is federal what? Put beside it, all matters arising from the Companies and Allied Matters Acts. All matters arising from CAMA go to the federal what? High Court. Now, but let me give you one cheat before I proceed. I think this cheat is very necessary. Now, listen carefully, class. In most corporate litigation questions, they will ask you, how do you commence an action in federal high court for corporate matters? Now, let me give you one secret. Some of you that have been saying petition, 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 but you'll be wrong. Petition is only for winding. We'll get there, but I'm just telling you. Now, since federal high courts deal with issue arising from CAMA, it means that for them to deal with that issue, that CAMA needs to be interpreted. And anything that has to do with interpretation is by originating summons. So write it down. All action in CAMA at the federal high court is by originating what? Summons. So they would have asked you in the bar exam, how do you bring up members' direct action? Some of you have been thinking, members' direct action. Members' direct action is by originating summons. How do you bring up derivative action. Derivative action is still by originating summons. Anything that has to do with karma, it borders on interpretation. So the originating process to file is originating summons. Now let me tell you what petition is used for. Petition is used for one, winding up. One of the reasons why we use petition is for what, class? If a company is undergoing winding up, you can go by way of petition. And number two, unfairly prejudice and oppressive conduct. I'll say it again. Number two, unfairly prejudice and oppressive conduct. There are two ways of using petition in karma, corporate law practice. One, petition is used where the company is engaging in winding up, and petition is also used where the company is undergoing unfairly what? Prejudice and oppressive conduct. Now let me explain to you. When we say unfairly prejudice, I mean minority protection. Under minority protection, if somebody has been discriminated, any form of discrimination, you come to court by way of petition. Now let me tell you this petition. Discrimination was not contained in karma. There was no content in karma that talk about discrimination. So when you read a scenario that the party is aggrieved and wants to sue the court at the Federal High Court for discrimination, for what? And they ask you, what mode will you commence the action? Please, it will commence the action by petition. So generally, there are two common use of commencing action in corporate litigation. The basic one is by originating summons. Then if it is not originating summons, you will use petition. But petition must be for winding or unfairly prejudice and oppressive conduct. Please. So when you go to an exam in corporate law and you don't know how to commence the action, and it is not winding up, and it's not unfairly prejudiced, please, what will you shade now? Originating summons. What will you shade, class? So when you read a scenario that says derivative action should be commenced by dash, don't be afraid. Just shade originating. If they ask you, how do you bring up membership direct what? Don't worry, just shade originating. How do you order the court to enter your name into the register of members? Originating summon. Anything you use in corporate law that borders on Companies and Allied Matters Act, you will commence the action by originating summons. Simply because it deals on interpretation. It deals on what, class? Now, but there are only two actions you may use petition for. One, for winding. And number two, unfairly prejudice and oppressive conduct. So still in the listing of what I was doing, I said the various courts we have are one, state high court, two, federal high court. Have you seen federal high court? Three, investment and securities tribunal. Three, investment and securities tribunals. Investment and what? Securities tribunal. I'll say it again. Number three we have is investment and securities what? Now their own action has to do with capital markets. Any issue arising from capital markets, that is their own jurisdiction. Investment and securities tribunal deals with issue pertaining to capital what? Markets. So anytime you see capital market operator having issue, which court will you go to, class? Investment and securities what? I'm not yet done. Now listen, currently, two other tribunals or bodies have now been set up to handle issues. Number one, let's write. Administrative Proceedings Committee of Corporate Affairs Commission. I'll say it again. Administrative, A. Proceedings, P. Committee, C. APC. Not APC that you know. Administrative Proceedings Committee of Corporate Affairs Commission. When CAMA 2020 was enacted, it brought about this new tribunal. And the tribunal is called Administrative Proceeding what? Committee of Corporate Affairs what? Now let me say one thing about this committee. One, it is headed by the Registrar General of Corporate Affairs Commission. One thing you must know about that body. It is headed by who? The Registrar General of Corporate Affairs Commission. It is headed by what body class? Registrar General of what body? Corporate Affairs what? Number two, they are duly constituted by 4 members. The next thing you must know, APC of CAC is a new tribunal or body that adjudicates on matters in corporate law practice now. Number one, it is headed by the Registrar General of Corporate Affairs Commission. Number two, it is duly constituted by 4 members. It is duly constituted by how many members? Now let's try. Number 3, it has power to adjudicate on the following. Number 3, it has powers to adjudicate on the following. Number 3, it has powers to adjudicate on the following. Number 3, this APC of CAC only has powers to adjudicate on the what? A, names of all organization. They don't teach us this thing, no. They don't teach us this thing. How do I not know 1 to 5? I'm just telling you a clue now. Please, one of the function or the power they adjudicate on is issues pertaining to names. Number 2,